Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Trenton Pierce. Trenton, welcome to the podcast, my man.
How's it going, Quentin? How you doing today? What's up, guys?
First of all, I'm doing awesome, dude. This conversation is a long time in coming, so I think it's perfect timing because you're just a few short days out from North Americans, kind of going through the roster right now of interviews and conversations with guys that are going to be competing at North American. So excited to get into the prep and kind of all of the North American talk. But before we do, I really want to kind of dig into your backstory and kind of learn more about you. So the first question, just to kind of kick off our conversation, Trenton, let us know, please, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
All right, man. Starting it off nice. I like that. So obviously, always idolized Arnold. More in a aspect of myself. I really like Lee Haney, his version of training, just his physique in general that he had. He was another great. Sean Ray is one that I have kind of based my posing off of. I loved his style, just loved his demeanor when it came to him displaying his physique. As well as Lee Labrada. And then more of like the new school guys today. I do love me some Rough Diesel. I think Logan Franklin's came a long way in a sense from coming from men's physique into classic. And I feel like he embeds some pretty good classic physique posing with his stuff. And as well, number one guy that I love the most, teammate as well as Courage. Just went back-to-back winning 2 pro shows, heading to the Olympia this year. So shout out to him. Hope that he crushes it this year. But yeah, besides that, I've recognized here going through this prep even that I've gotten a lot more Lee Haney style training, just feeling how my body wants to feel, going in there, taking care of what needs to be done and making myself feel good.
Excellent. All right. So why don't you tell us, Trenton, at what age did you start lifting weights and why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Perfect. So yes, I was actually a lot smaller of a dude. I graduated high school in 2011, probably at a soaking wet 145 pounds. I did play sports. I played some football and baseball, and they made us run a little bit of track in high school too. But really back then in the high school days, my buddies every summer, we'd always have 2-a-days or we'd do workouts over the summer, and we'd always tell each other at the end of the year, all right, man, I'm going to come back and be bigger than you. So we kind of always had that mentality of trying to push myself through high school, but it wasn't until I probably turned about 18 or 19 when I decided to kind of like get into the working out side of bodybuilding. I was probably eating Taco Bell and Chipotle all the time then, so wasn't really dieting, but ended up, let's say, I think it was about 7 years ago, I met my wife and ended up moving to Dallas from the East Texas area. And that's kind of where, when we first got married and got together, I was like, hey, I want to try and start dieting. I want to see what I can do for about a summer, maybe grab a coach and try and run through a show. So ended up doing that, got a coach towards the end of that year, did my first show, I think in 2017. And I did Classic Class C, and I actually got second place in that. So I was one of the young ones who were like, yeah, let's go do nationals. So I think it was 27 or 2018 when I went and did North Americans for Classic B. I actually had Chris Bumstead as my coach at the time, right, as for that one. So peak week was kind of a little different. Had some good times with him, but also felt like there might have been some ghost riding involved. So it's kind of different peak for me. Didn't really get to fill up, but ended up getting like 20th out of 55 people in Class B. So that's where I kind of told myself, let's grow. Let's use this mass to go into open. Ended up doing a show right out of COVID in 2020, the Southwest USA's, and I won the overall in heavies for that. And then we ended up moving to Colorado before I could go compete again for North Americans or a national show. My wife broke her arm the first month we were down here, so that kind of put a little damper on things. She's been my training partner for the past 6 years. She's into this almost as much as I am, if not more. Everyone always says we're the soulmate couple, but really I just don't want to slow down so she catches me. But other than that, man, yeah, did the Colorado Cup, reached out to Gary Udit, just because of COVID. He did say that I was going to have to requalify. So got my qualification. Now we're going to go take it to North Americans and make some magic happen, man.
Awesome, man. All right. So we're going to take a couple steps back before we kind of dive fully into all things bodybuilding. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your childhood, your upbringing, where you grew up? You mentioned football, baseball. You ran a little bit of track, I think, for the other sports. You kind of mentioned that, but paint a little bit of a picture for us, Trenton, in terms of your childhood, your upbringing, parents, siblings, kind of all of that stuff up to about high school, and then we'll transition.
100%, man. So growing up, I have two of the best parents. My mom and dad are the best parents in the world. I'm sure everybody says that, but they have blessed me, more than I could ever imagine. And thankfully, God has blessed them as well. But with that, growing up, I had a really good, strong family. I have a half brother and a half sister. Both of them are a little bit older than me. I actually have a niece that's 2 years younger than me. So growing up, I was an only child. I spent a lot more time with friends, going over to their house, playing video games. I'd go beat them at their own games. We'd go do some sports stuff. I grew up in East Texas, so bonfires, four-wheeler, dirt bikes, all the fun stuff, fishing. But coming through, I played sports my whole life. I played baseball since I was in T-ball. I didn't join football until probably about 4th, 5th grade. And then coming into my junior high years is when we actually moved down to Van, Texas, little country area, to take care of my grandparents. We had a 100-acre farm out there, so a bunch of cows, bunch of big old lake out there. So I had to take care of all that stuff. Through high school, getting to that point there, like I said, I was an only child, so it's just me to myself and my parents. My other brother and sister would come down and visit every now and again for, Thanksgiving, all of our family stuff. But I got real into, my dad was a police officer and a detective growing up. My mom worked for Section 8 housing. She worked for the government. So got to have that fun spectrum of a cop dad. And being younger, I didn't get to utilize it as much because he retired by the time I could utilize saying he was a cop. But got to go through a pretty great, upbringing with my family. Life was really good. Once I got into high school, I really I was a smaller dude, but I developed a little bit more of that athlete version of myself. I was able to push myself. Like I said, our buddies were always trying to get better in the gym. We always tried to beat each other each summer to come back bigger. And, just from there, that's where I got more into football. I actually I had the second most tackles our senior year on the team behind a guy who went and played D1 at University of Texas. I was just 145-pound ankle biter, so I couldn't really go too far with that one. And then surprisingly, once I went to Stephen F. Austin for college, and once I got there, I actually picked up basketball and started playing a little bit more pickup basketball. I met a few of my buddies who were going to be physical therapists, so we started training a little bit more. I started getting down more into, trying things out with dieting and getting to, talk to people who had more knowledge on that side of things. So that's kind of where I started transitioning into the bodybuilding side of things. I wanted to be a physical therapist when I first started. Ended up shying away from that and going into coaching and personal training. And then once I got my cert there, I was actually working a 9 to 5 at a rock and stone company, delivering bricks, rock, all that stuff. So kind of had some here and there jobs up until, 5, 6 years down the road. Now we're here in Denver, Colorado. We have a full-time online business, as well as I'm a master trainer up at Anytime over here. So things really kind of worked out to where they need to be now, and everything's in a really good spot. And, now we're just focused on getting to North Americans, making it happen.
So what's something, Trenton, that your parents, you feel like looking back now as an adult, what's something or a couple of things that you feel like your parents really instilled in you or gave you to kind of propel you forward into being who you are at this point in your life?
Definitely my dad on the criticism side of like the sports and stuff. Like I remember back when I was a kid, young kid, my dad would be telling me like, oh, you messed up with this and that. And I'd get sad and be like, oh man, that sucks. Like I felt like I didn't do good. But that was one thing that I instilled into myself when I got older and grew up was, man, I needed to hear that. I needed to be in that spot to know how can I go back and be better from that? How can I discipline myself to not do that side of it? And there's a lot of times, especially in the world we live in now, where you're going to get a lot more coddling rather than someone telling you straight up how it is. And back then, you know, even my mom would get a little upset, but it was like, now that I look back on that, that is one of the things that I'm just like, I'm so grateful that he did that and was able to do that for me, because that opened me up as a young kid to be like, look, I need criticism. I need to listen to these things, especially in bodybuilding. I need that feedback of what the judges want so I can come back and be better. So that was one thing that really helped me. My mom, she gave me one of the best quotes. I use it all the time. I'm sure everyone does, but she told me, you know, growing up and getting into life, it is all about who you know. And just making sure you make those bonds with people and being a great person and just make relationships, you know, because the sky's the limit with, you know, who you know and what they can do for you. So those were two things that I really took to heart and that have really played a huge role. And especially with now being more disciplined with myself, because I saw something the other day about freedom and discipline. When you're a bodybuilder, especially in any type of sport, you're going to have that sense of freedom to where, hey, yeah, I can go do what I want to do. I have that freedom in my off season. But then that discipline comes around to grab you and say, but do I really want to go get Chipotle, or should I just eat my fish and rice that I got right here?
Yeah.
So
Great. That's some great wisdom. Now let's take a step forward. Now, you mentioned going to Stephen F. Austin University, and it sounds like you were interested in getting into physical therapy. So
yeah.
two questions: why physical therapy? And then the second question: it sounds like maybe you didn't finish that. So why didn't you finish pursuing the physical therapy?
So the physical therapy, I knew that there was going to be some long, grueling schooling involved with that, good 6-7 years. I don't think I played my mind out on that when I first looked into it. But the other thing I wanted to do on the backside of that was my grandpa, my dad's dad, was a fire chief. He was a fireman, and my dad was a cop. So I knew that there was in the blood that I could have been some type of fireman or police officer. So I actually went down to SFA to go to be a fireman and was going to go do like their fire program and stuff. But they actually had a bigger police academy, a big police program rather than that. So when I got down there, I was like, okay, I don't want to quite go into the police force. I was thinking more firemen. So I got into kinesiology. That's kind of where I went more towards that with the physical therapy. But I knew if I could get that and go for that degree, I'd be able to kind of go through training, do what I needed to do through that. And opportunity actually arose when I was at SFA. I spent about a year there. So my second semester, I had some people from back home in Lindale reach out to me to come do some personal training as well as teaching for special needs kids. So I moved back to the East Texas area and spent a year out there teaching, doing some personal training with the kids, just kind of working with them. It was a little school in Lindale. We basically got the worst cases of, you know, everything you could get when it comes to special needs. We had kids who were with single moms and they were, you know, beating up their mothers just because of how they were. So it was cool to be able to come in, interact with them, give them a new scene, and also be able to give them that personal training. It wasn't like we were going through hardcore stuff, but just enough for them to get praise with that. And I think that's what kind of also carried me over from that spot to say, I want to dive into my personal training. Because at that point was when I was starting to really come into bodybuilding and focus on myself as well. So I was like, I want to branch this out. It's just at that time in my life, I was still focused on pushing for myself. So now that we're here and in this spot, I am in a great spot, you know, with my coaching and our training. So it all worked its way up. Another good quote one of my buddies told me in my 20s, he said, you can either waste your 20s away and then spend your life building it in your 30s, or you can build up in your 20s and reap those benefits. And I utilized that for my physique and my body, and it has been great.
I needed that quote when I was in my 20s, Trenton. That's a great one.
Worked. That was something that stuck with me. I'll tell you that.
I like it. I really like that one. All right, so let's start transitioning into bodybuilding. I want to ask you before we get too far into bodybuilding talk. You know, when you first kind of started to get exposed to bodybuilding, whether that was seeing maybe somebody on the cover of a magazine or something on YouTube or whatever, DVD. What do you feel like really sucked you into bodybuilding? Because there's a difference between lifting weights for sports and, you know, just trying to get stronger and bigger. But what is it about bodybuilding that you feel like really pulled you in and it's kind of kept you on the straight and narrow of being a competitive bodybuilder, Trenton?
So with me, I always enjoyed, like I said, back to the high school days, I enjoyed trying to get stronger, just wanting to be bigger. we had a coach who looked like he was a little juiced up and everything. So he was one of those little guys walking around. So even seeing him and then seeing some of the guys who are a couple years older than me in football who are just strong, just kind of gave me that motivation. So I actually fell in love with the gym and training before I ever got into the thought of bodybuilding. It was something that I just loved doing. I loved going in there, getting a pump, feeling better, getting to see my muscles working, maybe a new vein popped up, or I went up 10 pounds. You know, there was always just something that kept me going for that. And it wasn't until, you know, it's funny, it's actually Callum Von Moger was one of the first ones that I kind of saw come up on the scene that I was like, man, he's enjoying himself. He's a big old dude. You know, obviously he went some crazy routes with his life and decided to hurt himself too much now, but it was one of those, he kind of got me into like, well, this is cool. So from that point, I started falling in love with the posing side of everything. And that's really what drew me into bodybuilding and what kept me there was posing. Just being able to go back and even seeing myself from day one where I was at, thought I was doing good to now is just unreal to me. And, you know, being able to feel my body work through those muscles, like it's helped me transition in the gym with my training, even being able to dig deeper into that too. So that was one thing that really I kind of harnessed into and I loved more than anything. And then to me, the process. I know that, you know, I got a good ways to go. I'm still working to bring the best physique that I possibly can every single day with my life. But it's the process from day one when I started this to day right now that I have really loved and enjoyed, and it's kept me going. And like I said, we did fall out of structure for about a year with my wife breaking her arm, you know, her being my partner and just going through something traumatic like that. She split her humerus in half. So it was one of those, you know, we took a good 9 months to really kind of recover her, get going. So this prep actually has been like a very heartfelt prep to myself to be able to, you know, get out of a spot where we weren't in structure, come into this and be able to put everything I have into this. And it's meant the world to me. All glory to God with this one. But this has been a really, truly sentimental prep for me. And I have really, really enjoyed it.
All right. So your first competition you said earlier was in 2017. You got second place. You competed in Classic Physique. Why don't you talk about that first competition just a little bit more in depth and in detail? You know, did you enjoy the process at that time? Did you enjoy stepping on stage? Just unpack that first show, because we all have our first show. Some of us do great, some of us do horrible. But it's always rememberable. So,
right, yes. So mine was definitely rememberable. It was a great show to me, even though I did place second. It was one of those solidifying moments. I went into that show. I got a coach that year saying, I want to test the waters. I want to see what I can do. It was my first prep, so you didn't have that thought process of, oh, shit, am I going to be ready? Do I look good enough? It was a day-to-day thing. I have never looked like this. This is awesome. So it kind of kept me pushing. I didn't learn a lot through that. I was very tunnel vision, just keeping what my coach said and went through it. But it was one of those, you know, even pulling a second place, I went and hugged my family, hugged my wife. My wife had a big blueberry muffin waiting for me when I got off stage. So I got to bite into that, which was one of the most satisfactory things I could have done. I will say this, and I'm sure most people have gone through it from their first prep, taking dairy out for the first time in my life and then introducing it again after that prep was horrible. So learned to stay away from dairy and inflammation foods after that, which was nice. But the show itself, you know, it was in San Antonio. I was living in Dallas at the time, so it was about a 2.5, 3 hour drive. Me and the wife made the drive down there. You know, first time being in the hotel, first time kind of doing the whole show thing. So we didn't get the venue hotel. We got a hotel down the road. So getting there, I was probably a couple minutes behind. I do remember prejudging. I had enough time to get glazed down and throw a couple rice cakes in my mouth and then run out on stage. So the quickness of it all, I think for me being the first show was nice because I actually got to kind of go through that process without stressing. It was just like, oh, okay, here we go. And it was amazing. You know, I got on stage. It felt right. All my posing was good. And nothing beats that feeling, especially as a first-time competitor, being on stage, hearing the first 4 names called out before you, and it's just you and the last guy. And I even remember them saying my name for second. I was ecstatic. I was so happy. It was one of the best feelings that I had. And then it's just continued to go up from there. Obviously, the second show I did was North American in 2017 after winning the second place. And I think I ended up getting like 22nd out of 55 people. So that was a humbling experience of knowing what I needed to play with the big boys and being there. And obviously I knew being not a first place or overall win, I knew kind of what I was getting into, but again, just wanted to kind of get my foot in the water, see where I was at. And that was another big realization of, dude, you are in the right spot, but we need to grow. And that's when I ended up really getting with Ray, pushing ourselves to getting to that heavyweight overall win in 2020. Yep.
Okay. I forgot to ask you this, and I want to ask you before we get too far.
Yes.
Why did you and your wife transition from Texas to Colorado?
Perfect. I've been waiting for that one. So when I first met my wife about 6-7 years ago, when we first started talking and dating and everything, she had been to Colorado and stayed. There's YMCAs out here that you can come stay at the Rockies and stuff. And she had stayed and worked out here for like 3 months. She loved it out here. They vacationed out here a few times for her life. And that was the same with me. When I was in high school, I had a buddy who lived down the street, and they had a big old 3-4 story cabin out in the woods. And they took me to Christmas one time, and we went snowboarding and stuff. And it was kind of there where I realized, like, when you're from Texas, especially East Texas in the country, you don't see mountains, you don't see things like that. So when you get to see something like that in person, it's almost like, am I in a Lord of the Rings right now? Like, is this real type of stuff? So we talked before we got together and even got engaged, and we both told each other, hey, we don't know when, but at some point we want to move out to Colorado. We want to call that home. We want to live out there. We're very adventurous outdoors people. And, you know, in Texas, we had a lake or two to walk around. So it's like we wanted a little bit more, because we vacationed here probably once or twice a year. The last shows that we did, we'd always leave and come down here for about a week and just kind of hang out. So, you know, COVID hit and everything, but somehow, you know, God willing, we ended up putting the house on the market. Everything went well. We said, if it sells, you know, we'll make it happen. Last year in December is when we moved down. January 15th of last year is when we officially moved. But that was always our plan. You know, that's what we wanted to do. And we wanted to open our online and coaching business fully. And being from the Dallas area, being well known through Destination Dallas, every little gym that's out there, we knew majority of all the people. And it was either going to be stepping on each other's feet, taking clients, or it's going to be, there's not much that you can go through. Colorado is one of the bigger areas of, you know, healthy people who are out and active. And we just knew that we'd have a huge opportunity here. And, you know, God's will be done. It worked out pretty well, and things are going great. But that's kind of what brought us here. That's what we always wanted to do. We wanted to live out here. And dude, it's been a year. If things came down to it, I love my coaches out in Dallas. Sponsors are out in Dallas. If it all came down and they wanted us to come back, you know, there's an option we could. But this is definitely home compared to what Texas was. But Texas always has my heart.
Yeah. So I used to live out in Colorado. I lived in Colorado Springs, and then I lived in Denver.
Nice.
So I can feel what you're saying, man, because I'm back in Iowa, which is my home state, and man, Colorado is just a special place. And there's a lot of transplants out there. And I actually started my first podcast while I lived out in Colorado, and I would do the podcast in person. And I actually, you know, had Dylan Armbrust on, went to the gym and went to his office.
Oh, nice.
Waddy, if you know him, he's a trainer at Armbrust.
Yep.
Super cool guy. But anyways, the point I'm trying to get at is that, you know, you talk to these people that are out in Colorado, a lot of them, like I said, are transplants, and you ask them, like, why Colorado? And a lot of the people that I connected with are just like, it's almost like a calling. They felt called, not necessarily by God, but there's just something inside of them. Maybe they'd been there like you and myself when they were a kid, but there was like a calling or just something kind of like drawing them to Colorado. There's so many like-minded people when it comes to fitness and, you know,
Right.
kind of the holistic approach. So man, it's a very special place. If somebody watching or listening to this has never been to Colorado, I would encourage you to book a week trip and just explore, because it's a special place full of special people, right?
100%, man. It is definitely worth making a trip out for a week, get in the mountains, be one with nature. I'm telling you.
Now, speaking of Armbrust Pro Gym, is that where you train out of, or do you train somewhere else?
So I had a membership there for the past year. Me and my wife both did, but when she broke her arm, we kind of canceled that out because it is a good 40-minute drive from where we're living. We're about in the Denver Inglewood area.
Okay.
So it's little drive. I still go out there now, probably about once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. I've been training with Dorian Hayward at that arm breath. So we've been getting some leg days in, touching on some stuff coming into North Americans. But yeah, I'll usually go out there. My wife works for Lifetime. So we're Diamond members there. So usually we'll train at Lifetime for the most part. We have a 24/7, like nice little community home gym here as well as anytime. So I kind of bounce around here and there. Recently though, I've been sticking more with Lifetime due to the sauna and the little extra amenities they have. But if I want to go get me a hardcore workout in, I'm going straight to arm thrust.
There you go.
That is the mecca out here, man. It is a beautiful, beautiful gym. Definitely a good place to be. Another spot if you come to Colorado, you got to hit the mountains and you got to go hit arm thrust.
For sure. All right, cool. Now let's since we're kind of there talking gym, let's talk about your training a little bit, Trenton. You kind of mentioned in passing about, you know, Lee Haney being one of your favorite bodybuilders, and more so than ever in this prep, you've kind of maybe tapped into his training philosophy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about when you first got into bodybuilding? How did you train, and how has your training evolved over the years, and why? And then we're going to kind of get more into some of the prep for North Americans.
100%, man. Yeah. So when I first started training, like I said, I was more of, when I was in football and sports in high school, I was trying to lift heavy. We had different shirts for tiers. So if you were in a white shirt, you were in like the 200 club, red shirt, the 250. So you had your tiers to want to get better about that. So we always kind of pushed towards that. But when I first started actually training and doing those things outside of just football style, 5 sets of 5, all those good old things, another one of the guys that I really looked up to and watched was Seth Feroce. I loved his YouTube videos, him and John Meadows. Again, RIP John. He's somebody that I worked with. Granted, me and him have done some programming together here recently, and I'll jump back before I go here. I've been doing a lot more Meadows style training. Those are the programs I've been running through. That's what I like to do for my people. I've loved his thoughts and theories on everything. But before, back to the beginning, I did a lot of Seth Feroce. I'd go watch a YouTube video before I trained. I'd write it down, go in there and try and do the same stuff, and then kind of gauge my programming from there. When I was younger, I was one of the ones who were not as good about writing everything down and tracking everything as much. So it was more of just like, I had set splits that I was doing, but I wasn't tracking all my stuff. But I knew where I was at. I knew where I was progressing. That is one thing I do wish, and I tell the younger people to go back and start doing now, just so you can have that, get yourself bred into that. But that trained like that for a good while. Loved set style training. Transitioned over to more of the Meadows style training. And that's really where I saw the most improvement, because before I never ran a full 12, 16, 8-week program. It was just doing what I needed to do. If I started plateauing, I'd fix it. You know, I was a balls to the wall kind of guy. If I'm doing 4 sets at 10, I'm probably doing drop sets with it. I'm going as heavy as I can. You know, I just wanted to crush my workout. So when I kind of changed into more of the get smart with it, but train as hard as I could, you know, give myself a little more structuralized training, flow through my movements rather than being stiff and stuck into those movements. Kind of like the 80s guys back in the day who had the best core. You know, they used their whole body when they moved. And that was one of the things that me and Ray have implemented a lot this prep. And that's where I feel that Lee Haney style kind of jumped in, was my days not, oh, let me go in and I'm going to have this laid out workout where I'm going to spend 2.5 hours in the gym. It was, hey, man, I'm going to start going through this set. Once I get to my top set, those felt great. I just crushed where I needed to go. Let's move on and get that next movement. And that kept my body full. It kept my body not tearing itself down. And I feel like this is one of the preps that I've gone through with this type of training, where even when I hit my most depleted spot, when I was at my flattest, even in the morning waking up, I had the structure that was still there. I never looked at myself in the mirror like, man, you know, you get to that point in prep where you're like, feel kind of small, need bigger arms. Like I never really got to that point because of the structure that we had built. And that's why we work so hard with posing and the structure of what we do to be able to get into a point like that, instead of tearing yourself down when you see most people who pose or when they're doing their training in general. So that transition was great. Like I said, I am a firm believer in mountain dog training. I will carry on that legacy until the day that I die. I loved what he did. He was one of the best mentors that I had in the game. But I love the philosophy. And one of his too with my normal clients is, you know, if we go over to a back squat and you feel it in your knees, you're having issues, we're not doing it, you know, with the bar on your back, but I take you over to a hack squat, something that supports your back a little bit, and you feel that in your quads tremendously, no pain, no nothing. Let's do what feels good for you. You know, we don't have to go do that back squat because it hurts you.
So what's your current training split, or what training split have you been kind of utilizing through this prep?
So I utilize do a lot of pull push legs. Usually the beginning of prep, I was keeping it pull push legs, and then it would be the same Thursday, Friday, Saturday, pull push legs. Compounds at the beginning, pump style at the end of the week. Sunday was always that family rest day to be able to prep, get everything ready for the week. As we went further into it, we changed it up a little bit. We had a week or two of where we just focused on chest, shoulders, back, legs, you know, kind of kept it more singleized on that one. And then now that we're getting towards the end, it's more of a, how are you feeling? How are we doing? Because obviously coming off the show 2 weeks ago, we've been yamming down 2 gallons of water since, you know, that Monday to now. So it's one of those, just making sure the food's there, making sure I'm feeling good, keeping the blood flow moving. You know, cardio kind of dropped down to, I'll do maybe 20, 30 in the morning just to get active, and then some 10-minute digestive walks after some of the meals. So now it's, you know, basically we're loading up, filling into it. But training comes now. Today I'll have a push day. I'll go in there, you know, I'm going to destroy my chest, my shoulders. But like I said, it's going to be with good movement, feeling it through. I'm not going to try and take myself to complete like failure. Just getting everything pumped up, looking good. Because basically yesterday and today is our kind of load days of what we will be doing coming into Wednesday, just kind of practicing that up. So
cool. Excellent. Now, you mentioned, or before we turn on the mic, you said your coach is Ray Baker. First of all, I'd like to know why you decided to you know, have Ray be your coach. I've personally never heard of him, so maybe just talk about him a little bit, how he's maybe helped you progress as an athlete, as a bodybuilder, how he's maybe helped you take it to that next level as an athlete, as a bodybuilder.
100%. And another one, he is, just like I was talking with John, he is one of the best mentors that I could have ever possibly had. And then just from day one meeting him, he was a humble guy, great guy. This was when Destination was still in Plano before they moved over to their Allen location. But I remember coming to Destination, I actually won a seminar for John Meadows through one of the guys who worked up at the gym. So I got to go there, got to work out at Destination, had been living in Plano for 6 months and had no clue that that gym was 5 minutes from my house. So I was like, yeah, let's get a membership, started training there. So Ray was one of the head trainers there. I had seen him before. One of my buddies had known of him. But Ray is one of those guys you look at, and you're like, man, you know, like you're kind of tall, a little skinny. He's not this big muscled up guy, but you turn around and he's curling 80-pound dumbbells behind you, and you're like, what is going on? So he's definitely one of those dudes who has so much knowledge in the game of what he's done, and he loves what he does so much. He is definitely an interesting character, though. There are a few people that I know have been close friends with me that can't quite grasp some of his techniques. He is very over your head with some stuff, but the one thing I could say, he's a very holistic, organic guy, shroomy type of guy. He's really, really in depth with your body and learning what you need. So for me, even when I first started going to Destination, I would watch Ray watch me across the gym while we were training. I could see that he was interested. I could see that he was like, man, some things are going on. So at that time, I was actually looking into getting another coach. And I had went through a workout with Max Townley and Steve Pucco. We did like a back day. And I remember laying on my face on the couch for 30 minutes after that day, not moving from how sore and beat down I was. But Max was one of the guys that I was looking at being my coach. And, you know, all respect to him. I know this was a different time in our lives and everything back then, but we were hitting some poses after, and I hit a most muscular. And he told me, do not ever hit that pose. It looks terrible on you. So I was like, that's not really what I want to hear from a coach. So that kind of got me into the thought more of, let me go talk to Ray. Let me get into this. So once me and Ray talked, we ended up kind of making a little plan, kind of set everything up. And prior to meeting Ray, he trained this guy named Alex Cook. He's another one of the guys out of Dallas, one of my really good friends, great trainer out there. So I actually worked out as a workout partner with him and my wife for probably 3-4 months, and got to see the style of training, got to go through, me and my buddy Jake were doing workouts where he put 15 plates aside on leg press on both sides. He'd be like, you're going to get 50 reps. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But we'd get 50 reps, and I also felt like I got hit with a bat in my knees for 3 days. So I remember the first time I trained with Alex, he took us through legs. We did 45 minutes of a workout. By the time we got done with lunges, I couldn't walk or move, but I had no knee pain. I had no issues with my joints. It was a solid pump and a solid workout. And that's what really transitioned for me, thinking, man, I need this style. I need this type of training. And I'd gotten to the point where I was eating all the food. I was doing all the bodybuilder things, but there was another spectrum that I wasn't tapping on with my structure, with my posing, with being able to move how we are supposed to move as humans. And that was something that Ray really came in there and opened up my eyes. And like I said, there's few people that he's worked with that have gone pro, and they just didn't understand the concept still of what he had, and they ended up doing other things. But he's one of those guys that if you can really hone in with him and learn and listen, there were times we'd do a posing class, and it would be like a light bulb moment every time we did a workout or pose. Something clicked right then and there, and it was just, that's what I needed to be able to set myself up to that next tier, and to learn about the inflammation things in your body, learn about all the bad stuff that, we don't really need to be having. Like, even Ray's real big. Like he's not a big guy on wanting to add protein shakes into your meals and things like that. Like whole foods, let's keep it organic, let's keep things great. And just how my body reacts to some of that stuff even is just insane, learning through some of those. So he's definitely one of the better coaches that I've ever worked with. He's going to be my guy probably forever. We've done wonders. I plan on, bringing this home for him as well as my family. All glory to God, like I said, and the team. So.
Excellent, man. Love it. Now, you train people, you coach people yourself.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the evolution of that business?
Beautiful.
From personal training, those youth way back in the day in college years, in Texas, to where you're at today. And I want you to kind of share with us, because there's a difference between training people, as a personal trainer in a gym, and then training/coaching people like online. So talk about your business, talk about the evolution, talk about some of those differences between in-person, online, maybe some things that you've learned, whatever you kind of want to share with us in terms of wisdom and lessons. And then we're going to finish up with North American prep talk.
100%, man. So yeah, when I first got my personal training cert, it was probably honestly about 9 years ago. I had the time to do it. I was actually at Anytime I was working out there, and the lady who owned Anytime was like, I love your energy. I love how you are with everybody. And she was like, I want to pay for you to get sponsored. So she ended up paying for me, or not sponsored, pay to get my certificate. So I got my cert through her, worked at Anytime for a little bit, and ended up going to a kind of bigger gym out in Tyler when I was there. And I was working, like I said, a 9 to 5 at the time. I was still focused on myself with bodybuilding. It was something I jumped into a little too soon at the time there, but I wanted to get certified and really have that as my background side. So I had a couple clients when I first started out, just being able to kind of get some time in the gym. I wasn't getting to spend enough time to pick up a lot of people. Wasn't doing online stuff at the time. I was probably 20, 21 back then, so a little younger. But ended up moving to Dallas. From that point, I had a few buddies who actually owned some gyms. So we would go over to their gym. They'd let us come train out of there. So I had maybe just a handful of people. I'd go train here and there while I got to work my other jobs. I was a delivery driver. I delivered surgical supplies and linen. So I was working about 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day. I was up at 2:30 doing my cardio before work for preps and all that. So but back to that, I was doing all my training on the side at that point. Once I started getting into shows and stuff, that's when the online people kind of started hitting me up more. So I was giving a lot more knowledge to them. I don't know how far, in talk we go with this, but one thing that, I'm very versed in, and something that I studied my ass off, because this is something I want to bring to the industry, that's, the darker side of the industry. But needs light shed on it is definitely the gear side of everything, and the side of just, you got all these young dudes seeing all these guys and they're thinking, oh, they're doing this, that, and the third. I want to do that. And, I had a lot of people reach out to me back when I was younger, about those things. So I studied, I did everything I could. I'm still working on getting, some certs here and there just to make sure all my stuff's right. But, obviously making sure our blood works there, making sure we check everything before we even touch any of that stuff. But that's something that going forward with my team, with Ray and everything that we're doing, that's what I would kind of want to be known and versed for. I want to be able to help people out instead of let people just go through this life and think like, okay, cool, we can do whatever and we'll be fine. Because we got to have the longevity of this, man. We've had a lot of crazy stuff happen in bodybuilding, and it's just something that needs a little more light shed on, even though it is a darker side of things. But I've helped a few people with that, gotten to go through that. That's where I kind of started getting more of my knowledge on the terms of, not doing full personal training and online stuff at that time, but still being able to focus. So going through the couple years through that, now that we're down here, we got our suffer first business going on. Our business is suffer first, glory second. That's our motto. That's what we do. That's our coaching. So once we moved down here, that's when I started getting more that FaceTime one-on-one training sessions with Anytime. One of the best, I had a guy who had Crohn's disease, had really bad issues with going to the bathroom, and his goal was, I want to put on about 15 pounds in 3 to 4 months. And, he was one of the guys who struggled with eating and obviously was going to the bathroom a lot. And we ended up in a 3-month period putting on about 25 solid pounds of just him getting some consistent diet. So seeing things like that, going through, like, everyone's got excuses, everyone has things going on in life, but it doesn't mean you can't put it aside and actually make it happen. So with that, going into the online side of things, so now that we have competitors, we got a lot more people doing shows. We just had a guy who did the same show as me that we went through, and he ended up getting second for his first time ever competing. So he was real close to taking the Masters. It was really, really, really cool time. But, even with that, and then with my coach, like, we've noticed a lot, like, coming into these shows, like, people don't think about how serious it is to do your check-in pictures for your coach, because we're not there. If we're in peak week and you got a day where you didn't send me pictures after your cardio or midday, like, you might have just missed out on 100 grams of rice that you could have had. We just might have missed out on filling up just a touch bit more. So diving into that, that's a huge, huge part of it. And I have noticed, obviously, being in person with some of these clients makes it a little easier to kind of see, like, hey, I can tell that you're doing these things. But, a lot of it comes down to, it's like I said, the coddling and the woe is me. And I've noticed, myself as a trainer, like, I take that side out of it. I give you what you need with the thought of, like, okay, we can have our rest. I understand we can regress movements and stuff, but just having someone push you and accountable, I've noticed, in person, these people are going to come work, man. They're going to do everything they need to. And then it's the little small things. I had one of my guys who left, the trainer at the gym, he left, and I got a couple of his clients. And this girl had worked with him for a good while. She was in her 250s. She worked with him about 2 months, and she told me, she's like, I haven't lost any weight. I haven't had anything change. I haven't seen results. I'm kind of disappointed. And I was like, give us a couple weeks. Let's see what we can do. So, obviously this is someone who's torn their gut up since they were, 10 years old. They're 35. They've been tearing their gut to pieces. So I told her, the first thing we're going to focus on, getting some greens from our company Inspired, taking you some magnesium, like getting yourself to where you can fix your gut. So we got her on that. The first couple of days, she had cramps. She was hurting real bad from the greens. I told her, I said, your body's not used to it. Third day, and it's been a month or two now, she has not missed her greens. She's lost probably about 5 to 10 legitimate pounds just from healing that gut a little bit, just from changing some foods up a little bit. So there's so many little small factors that help with some of these people that, you don't think about. You're like, oh, let me put you straight on cardio. Let me put you straight into these hard workouts. Let's focus on the things we need to focus on, and then go into some of those things. So little things like that have excelled so much progress for a lot of my clients. And that right there is hyped them up more than I have ever seen for wanting to keep progressing and going forward. And like I said, with the online clients, it's a strenuous job. You obviously know, having to be on the computer, go through podcasts and things, like, you just got to be able to communicate, and you got to be real with your coaches when it comes to online stuff, because we don't see you. I don't know what you're doing behind the scenes. All I know is what you're telling me.
So last question about the coaching, training, business side of stuff. how far do you want to take this business? Do you have like a long-term goal or long-term vision for kind of the whole coaching training business?
Yeah. So my wife and I do this together. We run the business together. She is the nutritional person. She does a lot of the diet side of things. I do a lot of the training, gear protocol, as well as, you know, the outside one-on-one training stuff that we do. So she does a lot of the hard stuff when it comes to diet and when it comes to our prepping clients. And, you know, she just shout out to her because she has been doing amazing with that. Re-ask that question one more time.
How far do you guys kind of want to take this business thing?
So I want to be a top tier coach as much as I want to be a top tier Olympian. And it's the same with her. We value what we do for our clients when it comes to competing and being coaches with them. So this is something that is another passion that burns for both of us, is seeing people be successful, and especially Steven getting to put someone like that through his first show. And he came up to me almost in tears after and was like, look, dude, like, I just wanted to try this out. I didn't know that we were going to be this good. And it was satisfactory feeling to myself knowing like somebody put themselves through so much and reaped all those benefits. And it's like, it's a passion of ours. It's something that I want to do going forward forever. Like I love helping people. I love making people be in a better spot in their life. I mean, in the end all be all, like, you're either going to come to me and we're going to make it happen, or at some point your doctor's going to tell you you're going to die if you don't exercise. And like, at what point do you want to tell yourself, let's start now, let's make it happen now? So definitely sky's the limit with coaching. We've gotten a lot of, I have a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old on the squad now. I got 4 younger guys who have some really, really mad potential. And, you know, my goal is to whoever has, you know, the opportunity and is willing to be dedicated enough to work, I'll help you get to the top as quick as you need to, or as soon as we need to, whatever you need to. You know what I mean? It's the passion that we have, and we're gonna keep doing it, man. We came down here to make it happen, and we made it happen, and we're gonna keep it going.
Yeah. So if anybody that's watching or listening to this, Trenton, wants to connect with you guys in terms of coaching, training, where can they touch base with you guys?
So my Instagram is just Trenton Pierce, or our email is sufferfirstxglorysecond@gmail.com. You can just send us over an email. If you get on my Instagram or my wife's Instagram, we have a link tree that has a little application there, as well as set up for a call. You can just hop on there, shoot us over a message. We'd love to help all of y'all guys out.
Perfect. All right. Awesome, man. Okay. North Americans talk, just to wrap things up here. How many weeks out did you, you just competed a couple weeks ago, right?
I did. I competed 2 weekends ago.
Okay. So for that competition, leading into this competition, how many weeks out did you start your prep? Overall, how has this prep gone? How much cardio have you done? Just kind of unpack some of the nitty-gritties of prep, please.
100%. So this prep, like I said, we moved down here a year and a half, about January of last year, with the thought of, hey, January and February, let's take vacation. We just sold our house, let's go snowboard. The second time we went snowboarding is when Gabrielle broke her arm. So like I said, that whole year of last year was, I was still keeping my structure of maybe 4 or 5 meals a day, bringing my meals to me to work, doing everything, but I was a lot more, oh, you're kind of hurting today, let's go get some margaritas and ice cream, you know, that'll make you feel better. So it definitely gave me a good time to sit back and reflect and live life a little bit and be there for her for what she needed. But coming into January of this year and in knowing that I was going to be doing North Americans, I had probably set a note in my phone. I usually do it. It's always at about 34 weeks, 32 weeks. When I'm like, all right, 32 weeks. Now I wasn't gung-ho consistent that whole 32 weeks, but that's kind of where my mindset starts playing as, hey, it's time. So we probably legit started about 16, 15 weeks out for that first show. Still at that point, you know, I might have had a rice cake snack. Like I was still kind of getting myself out of the transition of that harder year. So that's why I said this prep has meant so much to me and myself, of just knowing how dedicated and how much I truly do love this sport, and how, it was a little difficult to get away from, living a normal lifestyle, coming back into the champion mindset. But, I got down to the point in prep where if I put a rice cake in my mouth, I'd chewed on it and spit it out in the trash. Cause I was like, I'm not about to swallow that. Like, what are you doing, man? So, but the beginning of prep, was nice. We were still getting a good bit of food. I was nice and thick still. So energy levels were good. Cardio didn't get too high till I was probably about maybe 10 to 8 weeks out from this last one. And we were maybe in the 30, 35 range 5 times a week. The highest we got up to about 65 for 5 times a week. I'd do maybe 40 in the morning and then a little bit after in the evening. And even for me though, I was the type of person, I might've did an extra 10-minute just digested walk, because it wasn't that I wanted to exert more energy from what Ray was telling me. It was just, I knew my body needed to push a little bit, because this was probably when we were like, at 4 weeks out and stuff. And then even coming into the last show that I did 2 weekends ago, I've always been the one when Ray tells me to eat more food when we go through getting close to show. I'm like, do I want to do 250? Should I just do 200 grams of rice? But this was the prep where I said, look, whatever he says, we're doing it. I'm going to learn the reasoning behind all this, get that grasp of it. And there was 4 days, 2 weeks before the last show that we filled up for 4 days in a row. And I was like, man, I'm not used to eating this much food. So it was definitely new, this prep, being able to really dive into like getting all that food in, making sure we're doing everything right. Even like yesterday, we had a high day and I woke up 210, the same as the day before. So the body's just churning, it's working right now. And that's why I said, we're doing more of how we feel, what feels good for us, what's going to keep this structure nice and tall and strong. But that was cardio wise. This prep, going into North Americans after that show, we probably kept it about, maybe 25 in the morning, 25 in the evening. It's died down a little now just because we're closer and we don't need to exert too much for the cardio side of things, just more digestive walks and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, today is going to be a push day, a little bit of chest and shoulders. Tomorrow will be kind of the last little full leg day, kind of going through things. Sunday will be kind of like an arm touch-up day, and we're actually flying out Monday morning. And then we'll probably do a little workout, touch what we need to there, and then come in correct on Tuesday for Wednesday. And I'll probably go ahead and check in Tuesday for bodybuilding too, just to get it out of the way, because I'll be underweight anyway.
So why don't you tell us, because you're kind of in a unique situation where before we actually started our conversation, you said that you're going to be competing in one of the classic divisions, and then on Friday, you're going to go into the heavyweight division for open men's bodybuilding. So why don't you talk about you and Ray's mindset or thought process with that? And going forward, do you see yourself more as a classic guy, as an IFBB pro, or do you see yourself transitioning into like 212, something like that?
Perfect. Yes. So that was kind of my thought for going into this. So me and Ray, obviously, being 210 this morning, we're right at the spot of, making weight for 212 for classic. So now we're just kind of playing with these load days to see, what's going to be too much, where we're going to be at that little perfect point to perfect this little peak. But basically, we're going to roll into Wednesday, get into classic, come in, sharp as we can, the best that we possibly can. And bodybuilding is actually going to be Thursday, the day right after. So our thought, obviously come in classic. Like I said, I've always been a classic physique competitor. Even being an open bodybuilder, I feel like I have massive class. That's what I like to consider it. It's just, it's what I like. It's what my body looks like. And it was just the height and that weight cap from 5'10" that was getting me. So being at that 5'11", hitting that 212. So if we get it and we take it with classic, obviously the goal, I will get to have a 10-pound weight jump for pro. So it'll be 222 for the pro stage. So I think that if we make it in classic, I'm going to continue running with classic. If all else prevails, and we can make it into that 222, which we will, I'll do that maybe for a year or two, see where we sit with classic. If I just need to jump up and, put on a year or two of growing, I will. Or like you said, even if it's one of those, we come in and just perfect, do everything we need, I might look into a 212 show just to see if our weight's going to be right there, just to kind of see where we're at, what we're doing. And then obviously, if I do take it in open bodybuilding, my goal wouldn't be, let's go do classic. It's going to be, hey, I'm going to grow for a year or two, try and get up to that 260, 270 and be Dorian Yates on stage. But yeah, that's kind of the goal. But if I do take it in classic, which is kind of what we're hoping and what we're going for, I'm going to stay in classic, being able to have that 10 extra pounds. Because even I think I weighed in close at the last show, I was about 218. So I know that 222 will be perfection when it comes to the pro stage. And, you know, that's kind of what we're looking at. But we did have the option as well, as if say we take it and I'm right at that 212 and there's a pro show I can go knock out and do. You know, we are very open to being able to do it. But I know we want to, if we go classic, we want to go overseas and play with the foreign guys a little bit. So that's kind of the next plan, probably, you know, for the next year or two, if we make this happen. And we're leaving no stone unturned, I'll tell you that.
So, where do you see yourself, you know, as an IFBB pro, if we get to that point, when you get to that point, before you're done competing, Trenton, like how far do you want to take this competitive bodybuilding thing?
Man, just like everyone else, I will be Mr. Olympia. That is my plan. That is my goal. I'm not in this for fun. I'm not doing it as a hobby. This is my life. I wake up at 3:30 in the morning and hot mass out of bed to do this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is a passion that I've had. This is something that I want to do. And, you know, I told myself when I first got in this at 25, I said, hey, in 5 years, dude, let's set a goal to be pro. You know, I turned 29 this year. I'll be 30 next year. So I got this year. Next year is my goal. And it's going to be the same thing in 5 years, is get on that Olympia stage. And then 5 years, I want to be number one. So by the time I'm 40, I want to at least say I took it. You know what I mean? And that's my goal. And like I said, if it comes down to classic and I end all be all, if I do classic, I love Classic Physique. My off season changed a little bit. I'm not going to go rev up to 300 pounds or do anything crazy. I'm going to do more of what I need to for coming into a classic pro show. But my goal in the end all be all would be kind of like a Dorian Yates. Like, I would want to be at least 240, 250 on stage by the time it's all said and done at the best physique that I could have.
Beautiful, man. All right. So we're going to wrap it up here, Trent. I want to ask you kind of one last question, then I'll turn it over to you and you can kind of share any final thoughts, any final words, shout outs, things like that. But before we get to that point, what do you feel like bodybuilding has given you, or what do you feel like bodybuilding has taught you?
Bodybuilding has given me an endless route of things that I can do in my life. I've seen so many people, pros to amateurs, branch off through bodybuilding and start different things, where you got hair and makeup for shows, you got tanning, you got all this. My thing, and the most number one thing I can take out of it, is the discipline, the consistency, and then just the power of knowing, like, we can do this. Like, you can do this, man. Like, it's one of the hardest things to do, dieting. It's one of the hardest things to do, push yourself through these things. But, you know, especially with having a wife that does it with me, like, even this prep, I opened my eyes to, you know, not a lot of us, especially guys, realize what we're doing through prep and who we're treating wrong and how bad we're being. So this is one of the ones where I got to open my eyes and really, like, have a better prep, not for myself, but for my wife, for the people around me, for my clients, for everyone. So, you know, even that, learning that, like, hey, we're putting ourselves through this. You should enjoy what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, there's no part of this that someone's making you go do 50 minutes of Stairmaster. You choose to get on that Stairmaster. But basically, discipline, being able to know, like when I get in champ mode, when I wake up at 3:30 in the morning, every single meal I have for that day is made. All my pills are made for that day. Everything I did the day before. So consistency, preparation, you learn so much that you can use in just everyday life. And taking that away, even if I was to never bodybuild again, man, I promise you, I'd still prep all my foods every day. I'd still do everything the same, just because I feel the best when this is the lifestyle I'm living.
Yeah. Amen to that, man. All right, Trenton. First of all, I just want to say thanks for coming on the podcast. Like I said, long time in coming.
Thank you, sir.
I know that it's perfect timing. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, chopping up with us. After North Americans at some point, would love to get you back on and just kind of talk shop 100%. In terms of that experience. And before I do a quick outro, the platform is yours. Any shout outs, any final words, anything you want to leave with us? The floor is yours, and then I'll close us out.
Awesome, man. Well, obviously, I'll shout out my Anytime fam, the beautiful wifey, Gabrielle, Coach Ray, My sponsors, Inspired, Gas, Official Better Bodies, Fit Butters, just got with them. If y'all need any good peanut butter options, check them out. Code's going to be T Pierce or Suffer First for most of my stuff. Like Quentin said, if y'all are interested in coaching or training and just wanting to talk, posing, gear, anything, feel free to hit me up. Again, Quentin, thank you for bringing me on. Thank you for everything you do for the community and bodybuilding in general, man. I love these videos. I know a bunch of the people that I follow and see are always up, posting and talking about it. And you're doing a great job to get us a lot of exposure, man. So I just a shout out to you, 100%.
Cool. And you're very welcome, Trenton. It's a passion project of mine, man. And I love bodybuilding, and there's so much to learn from athletes, coaches, and those people that, are kind of in the thick of it in terms of bodybuilding. So you're very welcome. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If it weren't for all of you, the podcast wouldn't exist. We are, as of this morning, 15 subscribers away from that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So please, if
Let's
you haven't
go, guys.
already, make sure you go to YouTube, you hit that subscribe button, and help us get to 1,000. And we're just going to continue to produce and push out these awesome conversations, these interviews, this content for all of you. So if you want to stay up current on all of the Behind the Muscle podcast episodes, make sure you are subscribed to BTM on YouTube. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, on Castbox, on Podbean, and some of the other major podcast platforms. So if you just want to listen to it, you can find us on iTunes and some other places as well. One other huge favor I'd ask of all of you quickly before we wrap up this conversation with Trenton, make sure you take this episode with Trenton, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Trenton, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know you specifically listened to this episode and found great value in it. That's also a great way for other people that haven't come across BTM yet to realize, like, hey, there's this Behind the Muscle podcast. They're going to find it. They're going to listen. They're going to watch. They're going to subscribe. And the end game for me is that people will be positively impacted through these bodybuilders, these athletes, these coaches' stories that they're sharing on the podcast. So make sure you share this episode on your Instagram stories. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.